Hey guys, how you doing? Good morning. Glad to see you all again. So, just to give you a kind of an update what's been going on. So, week's been going pretty well so far. But also got a lot of like new stuff to kind of show you guys. So the first, for those of you who haven't been kind of catching me on BlueSky as of lately, because I tend to post a lot of my new stuff on BlueSky and DeviantArt. I've already reached day 17 of my Inktober stuff. Not Inktober, Drawtober. Hey Reggie, good to see you. I'm doing fine today. Hey Shay, it's great to see you. Yeah, I've been catching some of your new stuff from BlueSky. It's been looking really good. So yesterday, for those who saw it, day 7, which was ska, that was when I kind of did a band based on like various like ska bands that I've listened to. I kind of basically loosely based off like 90s like 90s bands and also like 80s like ska bands as well. Day 17 was Outlaws. I'll probably show the rest later on, but I figured for today, well, actually, also before I actually show you what I'm gonna be doing today, let me show you some of the other ones I've been doing like outside of Drawtober. So for those of you who remember those Rockstar drawings I was doing, while I was drawing Twin Simpsons characters as rock stars. Yeah, I did at least 3 so far. So I know one of the ones I did, I did one, of like Chief Wiggum. I did one of him. I also did some of the other ones too. I'd also did some of the other police guards. I did one of Officer Lou, last night. I did one of him. And also on top of that, I had did another one just kind of rounded out. I did another one with Officer Eddie as well. And so this is the one I had ended up doing, with him for that one. In fact, let me bring the camera out a little more so you guys can see it a little bit better. Because I didn't realize the camera's... Yeah, let me try to read. Sorry to keep doing this. I didn't realize the camera's just so far away. Okay, there we go. Now you guys can see a little bit better. So that's one I did of him. Yeah, one I did of him too. But today, I figured for today, I'll try to keep things like somewhat simple, but some idea I've been kind of kicking around in the back of my head. And I figured I'd do one called podcasts. Because one of the things I do tend to do every now and then when I'm not listening to music, I tend to listen to like podcasts as well. And I thought about this poll that I came across a while back. It's slightly unrelated. Is that I think Which Carter would make a good would have a good radio show. I think the answer I had was like Fry, Shaggy, a few two other characters too. And I just thought, what happened? Maybe like those 2 years, they have a great like kind of podcast where I could just talk about things. And so I figure, I'll probably do something here. Maybe they got their own little podcast show. And I figured we call some maybe like groovy games, like Shaggy being kind of a groovy guy from the '60s, and Fry with him being a guy who was really big into games. And maybe everything they would talk about, they would talk about maybe like various retro games. They would talk about music. Maybe they kind of, and have a lot of different guests up on there too. So I figure I'm gonna draw Fry here. And it's kind of one of those deals where I just do like do one of those crossover type of these crossover type of shorts. I figure maybe for Fry, maybe he's kind of leaning back in the back of his chair. Because I figure for Fry, he'd probably be more. I think I see Shaggy being maybe more of a host here, but Fry being more of a co-host. Let me kind of bring the back of his neck up a bit here. Yeah, and also I think things and all like since both guys, both Shaggy and Fry, both of them had voice actors that had kind of a history in radio. Because of course, those who remember Shaggy's original voice actor Casey Kasem, he was a famous DJ for years. And I think for Billy West, I think he has been on radio for a while. At least been guests on various different radio shows. Let me get his nose. Let me get the color of his shirt. Yeah, I figured maybe got 3 microphones set up here. Because I figured they could be probably talking over here. And they could probably have their guest on the side as well. So they could probably do Shaggy over here. And I'm gonna try to keep this one fairly simple one too. Even though it's involving like 3 characters, I'm gonna keep this fairly simple because I know later on I will have to kind of go in for work later on today. So I figured maybe I'll have maybe there's one arm kind of rested here. Gonna get his jawline. Of course, those who know Shaggy, he's got a very pronounced jawline. There'll be a portion for his eyes. Just kind of bring his hair, like bring his chin out to the side, bring his ears out a little bit more too. Also, we can't forget the hair. Is there just Shaggy here? There were a few other ones I was thinking about doing for today too for the Drawtober thing, but I figured I'd stick to something that's a little more simpler. Because some of the other ones I was thinking about doing, I figured they might take too long. And there's other ones I did where they where I really kind of want to save them on a certain date. Like there was one that I had. There was one prompt word that I plan on doing that I actually won't be doing until I think on the 29th because that's something very special planned for that day. We kind of bring his shoulders up a bit here. So let me kind of get his hands here. And you know what? I'm trying to think just yet. I think what I do, I'll make sure I have room for the little microphones. Because I know I have 2 microphones. Let me see what kind of microphone they could probably use. Because I know there's different. different because I know they got large overhang ones. They got some that are a little bit smaller. I think I'll use like this little smaller ones. Small ones you could probably use on a desktop. I think that's what I'll use. I think it was simple because really, if you end up doing kind of a podcast, like you want to, especially if you're starting out, you want to make sure you kind of keep like everything like fairly simple. I think maybe here they probably have their little laptop here. Because obviously you're going to need that just to make sure your connection is working just fine. And since Fry is from the future, technically he'd probably be the more like tech savvy. He could probably be the more tech savvy one of the crew. Maybe he's got water here, maybe he's got a drink here. Yeah, I haven't decided what I'm going to have my guest here just yet, so I'm not going to draw who it's going to be just yet, but it'll probably come to me sooner or later. So before I do that, let me actually start drawing, kind of start filling in our co-stars here. I think for Shaggy here, he could probably be, he's probably the main host and Fry would be more like a co-host. And I figure, you know, two of them together, since they both have very kind of like somewhat laid-back personalities. They're similar, but at the same time they're different too. Because even though he's very laid-back, he's also tends to be very neurotic and very scared at times. Whereas, you know, like Fry, he's very laid-back, but he's also kind of an idiot too. Let me get his mouth. Let me get his little teeth. Let me get the side face. I'm gonna come down. I'm gonna go around. Let's get his ears. Like a gun. Normally, I probably went straight with the color, straight in with a pen. But I figure here for this one, I figure for right now, I'm just gonna go straight in with the pencil just to kind of get the finer details on their face. I want to make sure they look alright before I move on into more like big to the rest of the stuff. Yeah, I'm trying to see them because on the reference photos. I think trying to ask you, do they have 4 fingers or do they have 5 fingers? Let me see. Okay, never mind. I saw a couple pictures, so I think they got 5 fingers. Okay, so that's good. Even I was certain I wanted to check just to be sure. Because you never know, sometimes you end up kind of misremembering certain things. Yeah, I think that looks good too. So I think what I will go ahead and actually do now, I think I will start going to actually kind of start drawing them in. Let me see. Maybe she's starting to nose in the middle. So of course, he's got a very small, kind of like rounded, like pointy nose. And ring his mouth, because he have it kind of go up in the middle. So at least it'll be enough to kind of show some of has over, but kind of goes up a bit. At least have enough room to kind of show his teeth. Let me actually kind of get his eyes over at it. And when I color this on the side, if I want to have them keep them white or actually kind of doing flesh color like they're like in the cartoons. But I think that's something I'll figure out. I'll decide what to do once I get on actually coloring it in. Let me get the side of his face. I'm gonna go down, around. Here, let me add a little bit of stubbles here. So he's got a little bit of like facial stubble here on the back, on the bottom of his chin. Let's get his hair. And this is kind of a challenge too, because this is honestly my first time actually drawing Shaggy. Yeah, because I realized I never drew him before, so I figured, yeah, you know, first time for anything. So I figured, you know, why not go ahead and do it. So let me get around the sleeve, you know, his shirt. Do that. Let me get the his chest. Let me get the other portion of his shirt too. Let me come down, go get the his arms. I'm drawing his pretty thin since he's got pretty long, like lanky arms. Arms. I want to make sure I have enough room for his hands. Let me get his little other hands here too. And what else I was getting ready to say? What was it? It'll probably come back to me. And also the other thing is that thing when I did those other drawings, the ones I just showed not too long with Wig and Police Force. I think two of them I did last night when I did one of my occasional like live streams on TikTok. Because for those that don't know, when I do streams here, well, I tend to regularly do my streams here on YouTube. I occasionally do some on TikTok as well. Only thing is the ones on TikTok I don't have a set day when I normally do them. So usually I just do whenever I actually feel like actually doing it. And just to really kind of test, you know, to see, you know, how it is. You're like doing it on different platforms. The only thing about it is I think when I did the one last night, I think I started probably a little too late. So I kind of staying pretty late by the time I was done with everything. Yeah, so I'm just kind of get this little microphone in the middle. And there's not too many podcasts I listen to all that much. I think the main one I listen to most part is Double Toasted. And, you know, Double Toasted, you know, Rosen, I think I might have mentioned them on here before. You know, they're actually kind of a group of like film critics from Austin. And what they do is they tend to talk about movies, preferably bad movies, where they'll roast them, they'll talk about other things too. And I've known about them for a long time too, because I remember I knew them back in the day when they used to have a smaller show called Spill, and that was really more of a show where they did movies, but they were all like they had more like but they were edited down to like animated like shorts. And they were always really funny back then. But I even heard that even back before then, they even had another show they did called The Real Deal, which is like a public access show. And they ran that for a couple of years before they decided to, you know, do Spill. And, you know, now they've pretty much done Double Toast for the past, like almost like, I say almost about 10 years now. And in fact, speaking of them, I actually had a chance to see them earlier last week. They actually did a tour. I actually came in town not too long ago, so I actually kind of drove out a chance to see them. It was really cool to get a chance to see them because they did a live music. I actually got a chance to meet one of them, Corey Coleman. And I was also nervous too because I wasn't expecting, you know, them to kind of like have a chance to really kind of like chat, you know, with the chat with the guests that were there. And also, I know they had like an after party afterwards too, which I was thinking about going, but of course, but I had to kind of leave a little early since a few since I know I have to be up early like that next upcoming Sunday because it was on a Saturday night too, and I had to kind of be up early because I had to have to take care of like that next morning, so I didn't want to be out too late. Let me get Fry here as well. Yeah, and I think I do like pretty good, like some standard microphones for them to use. Figure they won't need like a big setup. Be a caution. I'm gonna bring this down, bring it around his neck here. And yeah, they've all, and even though they normally tend to post their podcast videos online, because I know they post pretty much all their reviews on YouTube, but they do their live reviews on Twitch. And so basically, what they do, I think they normally record them live on Twitch first. Then they have one of their editors actually kind of come and actually kind of edit them down so they can be played on YouTube. But also, one thing I've done a lot, as of lately, since I don't really use Twitch like that, I normally watch them on Spotify. Since they got their audio reviews there, so I just listen there, and they're perfect. If I'm actually driving. Sorry, I had this coffee. I must have spilled for a moment. And they're perfect if I'm driving somewhere. If I want to have something to listen to, that's aside from just music. So they're probably one of the few, but only on podcasts I listen to fairly regularly. There's a few other ones too. Like I know another one that I listen to that's not really doing more is Talking Toons. That one was one that was actually one hosted by Rob Paulson. Rob Paulson was a voice actor, of course. Did Yakov Mad, like Carl Weezer from Jimmy Neutron, and a bunch of other ones too. But he had his own like little podcast for a while where he interviewed various different like voice actors, directors, and other people he knew knows the animation world. And they were always a lot of fun because they could be informative, they could be funny, and of course always the big standout thing they would do at the end is where they would do these little skits near the end where Rob would do they would do like a script, and he would have him do one of his voices, where could doing another voice. I know one funny one that always comes to mind in particular was like the one he did with Joe DiMaggio, Futurama. Frozen, he did Bender, and in that one they reacted a scene from Space Side 2000 where Rob he kind of plays himself as that's the astronaut, and Bender and John ends up playing on the Bender voice, but as Hal. And I think there's another one too where I think there was another one. They got E.G. Bailey from Rugrats. She had Tommy Pickles, and that was the one where I think I forgot the script they did for that one, but it was like a murder mystery type of deal, and that one she used like the Tommy voice, and of course Robin doing the voice he did for Dr. Scratch and Sniff, and it was fun because they were always funny, but they're always really chaotic. But it was also really kind of insightful too, because like one of the things they always talked about in the show is how one of the things they enjoyed about voice acting is that like even though you get a chance to really work for all these different companies and do a lot and work on these other projects, they have to do all the baggage that comes being a famous actor. They don't have to really worry about like having to be like mobbed by other crowds or actually being recognized all the time. At least not until they actually say something, say what they are. And also, I know in this case, when I mentioned speaking of E.G. Daily, one of the things she liked about doing voice acting was that she liked the fact that there was a lot less pressure, it's getting that feel because for those who don't know, E.G. Bailey, she actually kind of started as a character actor. She was a character actor. She was also a singer for a while too. But the thing about her is that one thing she said that she always kind of felt really pressure, kind of about her appearance, about her looks. Because in your acting world, especially in Hollywood, they're often very critical if you don't have like a certain type or look. And that was something that really kind of said that she really kind of struggled with, you know, when the acting world. So when she got into voice acting, that was something that she found herself really enjoying a lot more. She found a lot more liberating too, because she didn't have to deal with all those pressures that normally comes with that field. In fact, let me check on something for a brief moment. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Cool. Yeah, but they're always fun and really chaotic. I've always loved them. I don't think he's done any new ones. I think the last one he did was a few years back. That's the one he did with Joe Dante Bosco. You know, for those who did Prince Zuko from Avatar, and that was yeah. So it's even though it's not really going anywhere, that was honestly one of my favorites. Another one, and in fact, you know what? Now that I think about it, I think I know exactly who I want to do here. Since I got two human characters here, I think I'll have one that's more animal-like. So I figure, you know what? I think I'll do a silly. I think I'll just do Bonkers. I figured that'd be kind of like a weird contrast, having these two very more like, grounded human characters, having more of a wacky like Bobcat. So I think I'll have a video with his nose here too. Let me get his little muzzle here. There's neck up here. Let me get his little tufts of hair on the side. Because I figured I figured if they did a show, that would be the thing. They would probably bring on like maybe lesser known characters that don't really get as much attention. You know, Bonkers definitely is one of them. And sure, well, I'm aware, you know, Bonkers is not a perfect show, and it's not as strong as the other like Disney Afternoon Slide. I think you know it still had its own like charm to it. Like I generally do believe that. And also, like, contrary belief, you know, I think for Bonkers, apparently it wasn't really intended to be like a Roger Rabbit thing. Well, because here's the weird thing, you know, with that African show, he has a really bizarre production history. So apparently, when they did work on the show for Bonkers, they started with a couple of like shorts from Raw Tunage, and basically like Raw Tunage, it was basically like kind of variety type of show where they had like different cartoon characters that have these small like shorts, kind of similar to what Tiny Toons had already had at the time. It's something that was gonna be more perfected once Animaniacs came around. But it was when they had a lot variety of different characters. I know they had one with Marsupilami that was with one character because in fact that's bound to another show on its own. They had some other side characters, but Bonkers was the other one, and that one he was like a standalone character. It was very hyperactive, you know, Bobcat, who occasionally get you know in different you know misadventures. But he was by the time he wasn't a cop. Now that didn't really come up until once he gave him his own his own like little solo show. And on that one, apparently, when they did that, he kind of had the because he had two partners. Because at one, of course, he had the more well-known one, Lucky Piquel. That was a large, like, fat cop who didn't like tunes. Then, of course, he had Miranda, you know, was a lady. You know, she ended up kind of like filling in for him in the later scenes. But which was weird is that even though like the Lucky ones came out first and then the Miranda ones came second, apparently it turned out they were made in reverse. So apparently the Miranda ones were actually made first, and then the Lucky ones were made afterwards. And so I guess it was weird because apparently it was some sort of production. Apparently, I guess they didn't really like how the Miranda ones were turning out, and they didn't decide to release until they tried again with the Lucky ones. Which strange, because not like the ones with random ones aren't bad. Although I do say I think the ones with Lucky Cal are actually a lot. At least I think they're strong because with both of them having opposing contracts, because of course you got Bonkers very like happy looking and happy lucky and hyperactive. You got Lucky who's very like short tempered and like cynical. Having that back and forth between them has it's a lot more of an interesting dynamic. Yeah, as far as having him be a cop, that's probably something they probably did, when they were thinking, because there had been plans for a while to actually, make, like a Roger Rabbit themed cartoon, like outside the movie, because I think at this point, at least by the '90s, aside from the main movie, there have been at least two like smaller shorts that have been made that were completed and released. I think they came on the same time of over two other movies, and there was a third one I think that was scheduled to come out as well, but I think that one ended up not getting completed. And completed, and there was talks to have it be a TV show too, but it never. I think that never really kind of came to fruition. And so I think so. It was probably a good chance, with this particular one thing, Bonkers, they figured let's revisit that concept, but instead Roger will use another character who was fairly hyperactive. Yeah, and it didn't really last. I think it only lasted maybe only like one season. I don't think they ran that often because honestly, no joke. I think the only time I remember catching Bonkers on TV, I happened to catch the very end of it. I think I turned on. It was already ended. And went to credits. And in fact, that was the only time I caught it because I. Hey, Brendan Barty, hello. Hey, glad you dropped in too. Good to see you. And that was the only time I got you. Because the only times I had a chance to see it was on various kind of websites online, and of course Disney Plus, and of course that. Of course, on there, like they've pretty much kind of some great job like remastering, a lot of like the old, most of their older stuff. So let me get a little muzzle, kind of bring it down around his lips. Let me get his little tufts of hair. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you got the two of them together. And I could see them, despite being very laid back, I could see them having a good dynamic where Shaggy's kind of more of a leader, but he's also more talkative. Probably give the podcast a straight a sense of direction. And as Fry, with him become more kind of an idiot, he'll probably make things get a lot more chaotic as things going. And the chaos from these two that could probably be amplified or either taken on depending on whoever they got on board. Let me get his ears. Let me get his little tuft of hair. Let me get his little hat. Oh, I realized I never included a microphone for him too. In fact, maybe for him. I'm trying to think, where do I want to have it? Probably should put it right over here. I don't want to cover up his hand though. Well, I guess I'm probably gonna have to. Because he's got really. Because I was thinking of putting him right here, but it's gonna be kind of out of the way though. I figure I may have it a little bit further away from him because, of course, Bonkers, he's kind of a loud character too. So I figure they're gonna have the need to have the mic a little bit further away. Yeah, I watched Scooby Doo. It's one of the cartoons that I love. Oh yeah. Now, which one by chance? Like the original? Because you know they've had so many. Because of course you got the original one. You got Scooby Doo movies. Then of course you got Mystery Inc. Yeah, Pop Name Scooby Doo. Like there are so many different adaptations. Of that show. Like I mentioned, like early in the stream, like those who know about Shaggy, he was voiced by like the famous DJ from back in the day, Casey Kasem. He did it for about 40 years. He's been doing it since the very beginning, from when the first show came out, all the way until I think I think it was Mysteries Inc. No, that's no, no, no. He didn't do it in Mystery. I know he did Shaggy's dad in Mysteries Inc. I'm trying to think. What was the very last? I'm trying to look up. When was the very last time he voiced Shaggy? Cause I know like around like the like 2010s, at that point, I think Matthew Lillard, who does him now, that's when he kind of started taking over for him. In fact, let me look that up real quick. Okay, I think the very last I think he did, I think it was Scooby and the Samurai Store, because that came out in 2009. Mystery Inc. came out in 2010. That one he kind of switched to do his dad. And it's funny that even when because I've actually like heard audio of how he talks normally. It's like even it's funny even when you hear his regular voice, he still has that Shaggy voice. And that's the weird thing with some voice actors. Like you have some voice actors where you hear them, and you hear a bit of the characters that they're known for voicing, like in their natural speaking voice. And he was definitely one of them where you can still hear a little bit of Shaggy in there. The Upside Down Show is another one I call inspiration. Upside Down, I think I have heard of that one. Upside Down Show, Cedric and Blink Films. I think I vaguely remember it. Maybe an Upside Down Show was made for Noggin. I think I do vaguely remember hearing about that. I think I remember that now. Noggin 2006. Oh, okay, so this is a little after me because I remember back when the brief time I used to work for Noggin, that was before. I don't think they had this yet. 2006. Oh yeah, this is much later. Because I remember Noggin like back when they first dropped. I think back then they still played on like Blues Clues and those other shows. Yeah, but I do vaguely remember like hearing about that one. And what else was I getting ready to mention? I remember there was so many like different like adaptations, and it's kind of funny too because I remember seeing them the Scooby Doo movies when they first came out. So I'll check out really fun. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check it out. Yeah, I definitely have to. Cause I realized there was like a lot of like different like cartoons and different shows, like that I knew about growing up, but I never got around to really watching all that much. Like say for example like Animaniacs. Well, okay, with Animaniacs that's a little different. Like because I didn't really watch it that much when it was new. Well, one, I was still kind of a baby when the show because it came out, 93. I was a baby when that came out, and I really didn't see it until they started like re-airing reruns on Cartoon Network and occasionally on Nickelodeon because I really didn't watch WB all that much, like growing up. It wasn't until like much later when I actually watched it, and it wasn't until like really because I remember I used to catch them late at night. I remember liking it, but I think I really got into was probably I think I mentioned on my stream here earlier in the past. I think it's when I saw like reruns. I came across it online. I'll watch episodes there. Then of course later on when the Hub Network came out and they started re-airing that show. That's I think when I really got back into it too because it was kind of like seeing again with like fresh eyes for the very first time. Maybe like since now that I'm older, I really appreciate their zany humor a lot more. Let me see. get his little tail over at it. Yeah, and I think by the time they once I saw it there, that's when I really got into it. I think that hub, I think that was a pretty kind of a short. It was pretty short channel because I think because it was a number of different channels like for a while because I think it was like Discovery Kids, then it turned to the hub, and I think then it turned to Hasbro channel. In fact, let me look that up just to be sure. Yeah, that's right. It was Discovery Family. Yeah, then it became the hub. I think then it became Hasbro. Because I think by that point, that's when they start going all in on the Hasbro shows like My Little Pony, Little Pet Shop, Pound Puppies, and Transformers. They really start going in on that. On that. It's weird. I just thought about how much that channel changed so much within that time. But I really liked how it was for the hub for a while because that became old news because I think they had Animaniacs, they had Tiny Toons, they had My Little Pony too, but I really didn't watch the show all that much. They even had like Dan Versus, which was kind of like an weird outlier because those Dan Versus, like that was a show that was kind of aimed more towards like an older audience, and I think, and even though it's got a good cult following, it kind of really fit in there because the humor there was a little more. Because even though it can be pretty wacky at times, it's a little more subdued, and it had a different tone compared to say like Tiny Toons and Animaniacs. I need to get on the rest of the show because honestly I didn't realize it had like 3 like whole seasons. Yeah, but I think because I remember liking when it was the hub. I vaguely remember New Scooby-Doo airing right after Scooby-Doo. Where Are You in Boomerang with the Twirl Spritzing? Oh yeah, Boomerang. Sorry, the camera. Boomerang was where I really saw a lot of like more of the Scooby-Doo show because sure since I saw watched Cartoon a lot growing up, I saw a lot there, but also saw a lot of it on Boomerang too. Yeah, it was the Scooby. They used to play that one a lot. I was like, honestly, I think my personal favorite, it might be an odd choice, Pop named Scooby-Doo. That was honestly my personal favorite because I think that's the one where Wild and Zay, but also they kind of like took the show in like a different direction too. Because it's one of those few hang on. Yeah, because it was one of those the air to you. Yeah, because I know they had different ones. I'm trying to think. Is Boomerang even still around? Because I think they've discontinued it in a couple of areas. Because I know at least here where I am, I think they kind of partially discontinued on Boomerang here. Because on the Kirby service that I had, I think back when I was with my parents, when they had it, it ended up getting dropped from the lineup. Director, let me see. Okay, I see. Opera as a standalone over Top Genie served until 2024. As of November 2023, it's available to probably 26 million households, down to 47. Okay, so it's still around. Okay, I see what's going on. Closed October 2004, 20 years from the block. Oh no, that was on the block itself. That's from. Oh yeah, I see. Hang on. Okay. Okay, that's when it was on Cartoon Network. Okay, it's a streaming service that closed. Okay, that's what's going on. All the Disney characters are doing podcasts today. Saying until the Mr. Men show. Neglected all the original. Oh yeah, Mr. Men. I forgot about that. I forgot about that show. Yeah, right. Because I remember that was like mid 2000s. Still in part of the U.S. Yeah, because even then, even back when I last watched Boomerang, because that was the thing I remember because they rebranded it. Because I think they rebranded to have more of a kid friend to appeal more for younger kids. But yeah, it had been on for a while too because they would still play the same ads. They would always have ads to kind of like promote Be Cool Scooby Doo. And the weird thing is those ads they play, they would kind of play it like it's still a new show, even though the show had already kind of came and went for a while. Because they would kind of play the same shows, even though they have a wide variety of stuff they can pick from. Yeah, and even alright, which is weird too, because even before they did the rebrand, even back when they're playing more stuff, like that in Boomerang, it was kind of autopilot as well. Because I remember for a while what they would do with Boomerangs that with all shows they would kind of rotate, like different shows like so they for like their morning, afternoon, and evening block where they have like certain like shows. Yeah, it is kind of a dump right for their canceled shows because that's kind of because really like the same way Nicktoons Network was because Nicktoons Network was kind of the same deal where because it started as Nicktoons TV, so basically play all like the retro like Nicktoons shows right from the '90s, but then it became a point to where they would dump a lot of shows that didn't do too well on Nickelodeon, like they were like Cat Scratch, what was another one, Mr. Meat, and a lot of the shows that didn't do a Kappa Mikey, that was another one too, and a lot of the ones that didn't do so well. So that's Scooby Doo Villain TV, so we're not on HBO Max. Oh wait, they weren't. Yeah, I don't have HBO Max, so I didn't know that. I had no idea they weren't HBO Max. Would you think that would have been a no-brainer? Since they had Looney Tunes on there, and really since a lot of those a lot of like Warner Brothers topics, since they're taken on by Warner Brothers now, a lot of them were on there. So I'm surprised they weren't on there. But one thing I do always remember with Boomerang is that if one went through Scooby Doo or Pop made Scooby Doo, they always played the movies because I remember Boomerang they would have that little movie thing where they would play a different movie, and usually just about most, if not all, of the time they would play would be Scooby Doo movies. So of course you had I think it was Escape from Zombie Island, like that's the big one. Cyber Chase, that's another one. That's actually one of my favorites. Oh, Mr. Meaty. Oh yeah, that was it. Sorry, my mistake. Oh my god, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, the first time I drew Hard Can Ricardo. I don't think I've seen that one yet. I'll have to check that one out. Yeah, but I remember it was Escape at Zombie Island. That was one of the movies they would play. Cyber Chase, that was another one. That was honestly one of my favorites. What was another one they had? The Goblin King, that was another one. The Boo Brothers, that was another one they used to play all the time. I think there was one where he became a werewolf. Yeah, they had a bunch. The Ghoul School, that was another one. That was a cult classic too, because I think that one I think what was that show that was called OKKO? They did an episode that was like a tribute to that movie where they even got the characters from the Ghoul School like to appear on that in one of their episodes. That was cool is that apparently they even got a good couple of the original voice actors back to reprise their roles like for that episode, which I thought that was really neat. The Shaggy and Shorties while transferred to Boomerang, 900 Wedgies. Yeah, Wedgies, I remember that because they had different ones too. Because I think it was they had Nacho Bear, they had Big Baby, that was another one. Like what was that one that had the band? I'm trying to remember which one was that. I think it was called Something Something Avenue. Let me see. Yeah, because there were 2-minute shorts too. Okay, yeah, Nacho Bear, Colin Cat 22, Big Baby, The Talented Mr. Bixby, that was a good one. That was it. There was a band, the Bremen Avenue Experience, that was it. Yeah, I remember like for a while. Yeah, I remember they would play those all the time back when I was watching regularly. Cause I remember once my friend once we got access to over top cable. Yeah, Boomerang was kind of the main channel I used to watch for a while. Yeah, but Pop. Yeah, but I think as far as the different like adaptations of Scooby, I think Pop Name Scooby was probably my personal favorite. Plus, I think it also helps that really, because I have Disney Plus. He was on Disney Plus last time when I saw him, unless they took him off, or maybe it changed, or maybe it changed in different regions. Because sometimes with some streaming service like they'll have like if you use certain service like here in America, it may not have the may not have it in other regions. Huh, that's strange though, because I last time I was in Disney Plus, they did have it on here, at least where I am. I'll have to check it out and see. Maybe they took it off. That Josie Pussycats music video is my favorite though. Oh yeah, that was a great one. That's the one where they played did the regular like bubble pop one, then they went more punk. They went like arena rock, like Kiss. They did a country one. I love that one. That one was great. That's the one he used to always play. Then there was the Jabberjaw one. That me and my friends get no respect. That's another one he used to play all the time. I'm trying to think. What was another one he used to do? I'm trying to remember because I remember those two. They used to play those the most. They used to play those the most of all the ones they had. They had more experimental ones too. I think they had one where with Elmer Fudd where it was like a kind of drum and bass type of deal, but they used a lot of samples of like Elmer Fudd like vocalisms. They had one. They had of course like two of Powerpuff Girls. They had one. I think they had two for them. They had one for Dexter's Lab. And yeah, they had a lot of different like music video like shows, and they're always cool because like they could get because they could be funky, they could be like they could rock out, but they could get really experimental too. Especially because I think especially once you got I think a lot of them were made probably around like late 90s, early 2000s because that's the period where the original channel was still it was really popular, but they were still pretty experimental too because they wanted to kind of see kind of what stuff will work and seeing what will stick and what won't. Yeah, okay, so now I think what I'll do now is that let me start coloring these characters in. Big characters talk is a nice idea for you. Yeah, I wanted to keep it somewhat simple because I didn't want to do something that was too overly complicated. So let me get my pencils out. Markers on hand I was using that I was going to use for this. Okay, I got a few of them. Okay, perfect. And so I figure, for him, Fry, I'm going to color him, with kind of coloring his jacket. Speaking of Disney Plus, sometimes I'm bummed when they decide to slow down certain scenes like in Timon and Pumbaa. And I felt F for flashing images where scenes move too quickly. You know what? I noticed that. Because I've watched Timon and Pumbaa on Disney Plus as well. I've noticed where certain things get slowed down. And see, I thought maybe it was connection, it was a lagging issue. And see, I thought it was initially maybe because it was either lag or maybe because since they upscaled you have an HD, so your higher contrast, like it certainly started lagging down. And I thought it was just me. I thought it was just me that noticed that. Yeah, because I remember when I would see certain episodes, I thought to myself, why is it kind of lagging here? Probably got to be on Disney for reasons. Yeah, I'm probably like, honestly, I don't see why they don't. Like, honestly, I get why, considering the history behind that particular short. But I feel at the very least, like they could at least put a disclaimer like they do for a lot of some of their other older Disney shorts, would have given a disclaimer, hey, that this film may contain imagery that's not considered acceptable nowadays. Because I feel like when it comes to like movies or cartoons, like even if they have stuff in there that's really not acceptable and really shouldn't be repeated today, I don't know if it's right to really just like hide them away and pretend they never happened. Like, hey, just show them what they are, put a screen, let people know like, hey, this was done back then, but this was actually more acceptable, but we don't do that now. And and showing that so that way people kind of really learn from that. Yeah, and I think but I know there's a thing on side, but there's a couple of other stuff on there. I think Disney still has a whole bunch of other stuff on there. I don't think they've ever like put onto Disney Plus just yet. God, I know they don't have songs and stuff. I'm trying to. I wonder if they have Fun and Fancy Free on there too. Because I know a lot of those Disney films that came out in the 40s. A lot of those tend to get pretty much ignored for the most part. Because of course. Song of the South, Fun Fancy Free, Make Mine Music, that was another one too. And all those kind of came out kind of a weird, awkward period because it's a little bit after, like Disney's Golden, because it's after like say films like Bambi, Snow White, Cinderella, and Fantasia. it's after that period, and but we haven't gone to Silver Age just yet, where we had like Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, instead of we haven't really gotten to that era just yet. It's kind of a bizarre little middle ground where they were still making stuff still very popular, but they hadn't really had like huge hits yet. Let me see. Sun's out. To be at Looney Tunes. Oh yeah, they are on Looney Tunes. I think they had some more in there too. And I'm telling you, Tubi has become like the I think Tubi and Pluto TV, they've kind of become like the huge underdogs nowadays when it comes to watch like older cartoons. Because I know if I want to watch like older cartoons, I'll switch to Tubi. If I want to watch like old school anime, I'll probably watch Tubi as well. But also I'll turn to Pluto TV now too. And that's cool. They got good stuff. And also like the few times I've watched, I think they got Tubi. They have Looney. They also got Tom and Jerry. They got Tech Saving ones too, and they got good quality prints too, which I really do like. Cause like with some of these streaming services, some of these channels, like even when if they play them regular, they won't have a good. Sometimes they won't have a good quality print. Like I know, for example, with Pluto TV, I don't know if it's still there anymore. They had one channel where they play like, well, I think for the most part they play like public domain cartoons, but occasionally they would play like some Looney Tunes ones too. But the thing is, they'll play like really old like black and white ones. And you think they'll play the ones as is, but they'll play at these these really old like third generation copies where these were copies that were reanimated. So basically, when a lot of these like black and white started appearing on TV, probably in the 60s and 70s, what they would do is they would colorize them. But the thing is, back then it was a very like tedious process. What they would do is they would outsource to places like Korea. And basically, like, what they would do is that, like, instead of drawing every single frame, they would redraw every other frame. So what would happen is that like you would have the animation looking really choppy, whereas the original was very smooth. And you have to kind of repaint the backgrounds too. And it looked really awful. At least I thought it looked really awful. So, of course, flash forward to like say the '90s when Ted Turner got a hold of a lot of these old black and white cartoons. He was able to have them digitally colored, so they wouldn't lose. So even though they've been colored, they wouldn't lose the overall like animation quality original ones had. We got color him in orange here. So let me see. I'm trying to think what else do I want to add. So let me see what the other color palettes I had. I had a few of the colors I was using for a moment. Here we go. Let me get his green. He has green shirt. And for those who probably don't already know, apparently it was for a brief while like Shaggy was a vegetarian. And one thing is, I remember there was well, two things. I remember back when they used to do like little 2 minute bumpers, but also they do like these little brief little commercials, but these little shorts. I remember they had one where they actually had one where Shaggy revealed himself he would be a vegetarian, and what's that say? I've lived a Nutcracker at Vienna State Ballet. I've not watched all of it yet. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. I don't know how much Blu-ray was like. I still have a few Blu-ray stuff left over. I think a lot of the ones I've had, I think I've since gotten rid of. Because we have a DVD player. We don't necessarily have a Blu-ray player. But what was I about to say? What was it? Oh yeah, but apparently like, in that particular show, he was be a vegetarian. And apparently this was actually something that was requested by Casey Kasem himself. Because apparently in later years, Casey Kasem, well, I probably shouldn't have used yellow for that. That might be a little too dark with orange. I could probably fix that later on. And because apparently what happens like in later years, Casey Kasem became vegetarian, and when he got back into voicing Shaggy, he requests like once he voiced Shaggy, having him be vegetarian too. But of course, I think they never really stuck with it. I think they only stuck with the vegetarian like plot whenever like he was voicing him. But hey, thanks. I'm glad you like him. Yeah, he only. I'm trying to see how that looks in here. Yeah, cause his hair is more than more like a dirty blonde. Like he's like dirty blonde, like brown hair. Let's have different. Let's have to use something different color for him. And because I think the only times where in Casey Kasem's voicing them were later adaptations, he's vegetarian. But of course, I think once Matthew Lillard, I think once he started voice, they kind of like scaled back on that. And also, I completely forgot for a brief while, Scott Menville. I think Scott Menville, you know, from doing on Robin from Teen Titans. You know, there was a brief period for a while where he voiced. I think he did what was that show he did? Scooby Doo Get a Clue. That was the one. I remember being that because I had it on Kids WB. I remember that one being just okay. I thought that one was just okay. Yeah, because I think he had a dip. Of course, I know Shaggy had both different voice actors for a while. Because I know, because Casey Kasem did for a while. Scott Matthew, he was the main one. But he had a few others in between too. Scott Inez, that's the other one I was thinking of. Scott Inez voiced him for a while. In fact, he did him from like the mid to late '90s, early 2000s. Because he was in Zombie Island, Cyber Chase, and the Witch's Ghost. That was another one he did. Because he did both. Well, I think he did three or four characters. Because he did Shaggy, he did Scooby, and he did Scrappy as well. And so, where's I had another mark I was gonna use. I'm trying to see what happened to it. Here we go. Here's the one I wanted to use. And it was really cool. We had a chance to actually kind of meet him like last year. I think I asked him which one, out of all the characters when it comes to Scooby, which one did he enjoyed voicing more? And while he said he didn't have a huge preference, he said he probably did kind of like doing Shaggy more. Because one thing he says that before he got in the voice, like he used to always do he used to be a comedian. He used to be known for doing impressions. And so whenever he did impression, a Shaggy one, that was one of the first ones he really learned like how to do. So of course, once he kind of got into really in the voice acting, like, and ended up getting picked to voice Shaggy and Scooby, it was like a dream come true because like you're doing a character that you got famous for doing all these years as imitation. Now you're actually one of the main actors. I'm trying to think who else did voice him. I'm trying to remember. I think there was one other. I'm trying to think there was one other voice actor that did him aside from Scott Inez and Matthew Lillard and Scott Menville. I'm trying to remember. Let me see. Let me look that up real quick. Okay, yeah, Casey Kasem from 1969 to 2009. Huh. Keith Scott? I'm gonna look at some of his voice actors. Keith Scott apparently did him once in 1981. C. Martin Croker in 1997. These might have been for some one-off specials where they did him there. That's right, Billy West. He did him for a brief moment. I think he did. I forgot what special, but he did voice Shaggy for a brief while. Scott Inez, 1999. Matthew Lillard since 2002. Scott Member 2006. That's from Scooby Doo Get a Clue. Nick Pilatus, I think I've heard of him. I think he did him once in 2009, 2011. Will Forte, yeah, I think he did him in the I think he did that new movie Scoob. I think he did him there. And Ian Armitage, I think he did him another thing in 2020. Okay, so he had a lot more than I realized. I didn't know he had that many. Probably should. I think I'll use color pencil kind of lighten, this pale, because I think it's a little. I think the flesh here is a little too much on the redder side. Well, I guess we could say Shaggy's got a tan here. Speaking of Scooby-Doo, I think the very most recent Scooby-Doo thing I had seen is on I saw one of the more recent Scooby-Doo movies. I think it was the one It was called Return to Zombie Island. That one, it's interesting. So apparently, it's that's when they return to the mansion where they encounter all those zombies. But apparently this time the whole plot is that they're inquiring this director who wants to shoot a movie. Then they come to like these zombies again, and they do a lot of like various callbacks to the original movie. But of course, the only thing about the art style, in the newer one, it's a little more simplified compared to the old one. Because that's the big thing about the older like Zombie Island. Like it had a very distinct art style where when things got scary, they really did get scary. And here in the new one, everything's kind of a lot more toned down. And also, I feel like in that newer one, I feel like there's a really neat idea that I don't think they really touch on too much. Where there's kind of a running thing throughout the show where when they start seeing monsters and zombies everywhere, like they keep saying like you didn't see anything. We don't have time. Like they kind of start disassociating themselves from what happened when they went the first time around. Which in a sense makes sense because like if you remember how Zombie Island turned out, that was the one where the monsters were actually real. But also though, that's the one where they almost died too. Like that was actually one where they almost didn't make, where really they almost didn't make it. So on one hand, you could someone understand from them from not trying to want to forget that particular night, but at a certain time, it's like that's something you really can't forget. And honestly, I feel like if they did that plot, it'd probably been better if they just kind of stuck with him. If they decided to go for different location altogether, rather than trying to call back to a much more superior movie. Because even though it's not as bad, I've heard some people really kind of like trash this particular special. Cause I'm trying to let me look at the name real quick. Let me see. Hang on. What it is? Yeah, Return to Zombie Island. So it came out. Oh, it's been around that long. Came out in 2019. Oh wow, it feels like it wasn't that long ago. But yeah, no, that is about right. 2009. That's about right. They made a beer with Fry. Because I think Fry would actually be a beer. Shaggy, since he's kind of more of a hippie type, he probably wouldn't really want to. He probably wouldn't really want to mess, with beer. He probably stick with water. That's pretty good. Let me get the old things in the chair. Let me get the table while we're at it. Let's see what else I can add. I got a lot of pages open. Let me close down a few of these. Yeah, I've been looking up a couple of different stuff while I'm working on this. I didn't realize I had so much open. Okay, so now what I'm actually gonna do. Let me make sure I have enough stuff in my writing. So I figured the podcast be called maybe Groovy Games. That'd probably be the name of the thing. So I think I'll draw the top up here. So I think I'll use a mixture, maybe like some more psychedelic colors. Maybe that's part of their. Okay, yeah, I'm just looking at Scooby-Doo. I forgot. I keep forgetting they had so many different movies. Because honestly, you could do a marathon with just their movies alone. 'Cause I think the first one, I mean, not counting this new Scooby-Doo show. I think new Scooby-Doo show, those were ones where they had an hour-long episodes. I think the first actual movie I think they had was actual like Boo Brothers. That was the one. Meet the Boo Brothers. I think the most recent one was Scooby Doo and Crypto 2. When is this one coming out? 2003? I've never seen this one. I know they did one with Crypto. Honestly, now I think about it, I'm surprised they haven't done one with him with Crypto sooner. Especially since they recently had well, not recently, they had a show back, came out an early show called Crypto Scooper Dog, which I remember really loving that show. Back when that came out, I remember really liking that, kind of liking that show. And that was, I think that was like, like a Hanna-Barbera, like, I can't remember if it was made by Hanna-Barbera or if at least it had that style. Yeah, I'm surprised they hadn't done anything sooner, sooner with those two. I'm surprised I never heard about it, because that came out like 2003, so this was like not that long ago. In fact, let me see. I see a few, in fact, I see a whole bunch of other ones on here. Let me see. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of other movies on here I didn't realize they had. Let me see. Oh, I got the wrong one. Hang on. Yeah, Scooby-Doo Cricker 2, Trick or Treat, I'd heard about that one. Straight Scooby-Doo Sword and Scoop, haven't heard of that one. Straight Out of Nowhere, Scooby-Doo's Courage the Cowardly Dog. I haven't seen that one yet. I've heard that one's pretty good. Because that's when they crossed over with Courage the Cowardly Dog, and that one they got most of the original voice actors from Courage to come back. Of course, the guy who does Courage, hang on for a moment, hang on. Alright, I'm back. Yeah, because I'm seeing a whole bunch of other movies that I don't even recognize. And see ones that, at least ones I've heard but now getting to checking out. Curse of the Ghost, Gourmet Ghost, haven't heard that one. Moon Monster Madness, I think I've heard that one. Scooby-Doo and Kiss. The Lego Haunted Hollywood, Camp Scare, Goblin King. Okay, so they had a lot more than I realized. I didn't realize they had this. I knew they had a lot. I didn't realize they had this many, though. Wow. That's too funny. And alright, so I had another pen I was going to use. Oh, here we go. I figured I'll probably go around using these gel pens. I take a picture of Bugs Bunny figurine. I saw that figurine. I remember you post on BlueSky. That was a really neat figurine. Where'd you end up finding it at? Because I'm about to probably find one of those for myself one of these days. Because that was a really cool figurine. Because I think it was collecting things like that different characters. I'd rather get something like that rather than say like the little Funko Pops. Because I got nothing against it. It just never really caught my attention all that much. But that was a really cool find that you came across. Yeah, I remember you showing that off. Found out on Amazon. Oh, Amazon. Oh, okay. Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. You got everything on Amazon. Yes, I'll have to check that out. This is not turning out the way I like for the font. You know what? We might make this work. We still make this work somehow. Yeah, it's been a while since I ordered any friends. I think the most one of the most recent ones I got that new The Date Earth Blew Up movie from Looney Tunes. I got ordered that for Amazon. Because even though it is on streaming, I think it only plays on HBO Max. I don't have HBO Max, and plus, I kind of, something like that. A movie that I want to see twice in theaters. I kind of want to have it like on physical media too. Because they're all, because one thing about it, they're always at at theater. That like one day, like that show or movie that you like that's on that stream search that you normally use. It may not be on there later on down the line. So it helps to have like a good physical copy, to kind of fall back on, so you can actually watch at your own pleasure. Groovy games. Yeah, I think probably my favorite Scooby Doo related stuff, of course, Puppet Named Scooby Doo, that was one. Cyber Chase, that was another one. Oh, crossover, I think I remember that one they did with Johnny Bravo. Yeah, Johnny Bravo, where they appeared on that show for a little bit for one episode. Yeah, I remember. I think that's probably one of the ones I think most people remember most from that show because even though it's kind of making it's a short parody with homage, you could tell it's made with like a really sincere love and appreciation like for that original show. Oh, uh-oh. Oh no. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. As a cross, hey, thanks. I'm glad you like it. Uh-oh, okay. Let me move my hand a bit so I don't keep smearing the paper. Yeah, because I'll be almost done with this kind of pretty soon enough. Yeah, I can always fetch it digitally, but also I can fetch it digitally, but there's also another way I can do it. I can fetch it digitally, or I can always use these pro markers. I got a little white one here, so all I gotta do here just kind of go around here, just kind of lightly kind of go over here, and see the smear is gone. And like I said, there's always kind of more than one way to kind of actually fix an issue. Sometimes you can do it digitally, because a lot of times I tend to do that a lot if I botch my line work. Normally, what I do is that, like, say for example, yeah, funny enough, I did. Funny enough, I have used whiteout a few times to go to fix line work. But a lot of times, if it's really small areas, sometimes I'll use like these Sharpie like white markers, or I'll use like these little gel pens. I usually have some in white that I'll use too. Those are for touch ups. I kind of start using these a lot more because at least with these, it doesn't, it dries very quickly. It covers a larger area, and it's easy to kind of draw on top of it too because like once it dries up, you can actually make it. To be fast at sketching and digitizing. I'm the same way too. When it comes to drawing, like I'm more quicker. When it comes to drawing things out, right? Drawing out as a pen and paper rather than doing it digitally. That's why, and even now, if I do stuff that's more digital, I'd much rather draw the whole thing out like like draw it out in pencil, ink everything in pen, and then scan it in using my scanner. I'll wait for that to dry for a little before I actually add more. Before I draw on here, then scan it in and actually cover everything in digitally. That's at least how I prefer normally do it. Because there have been a few times I have tried like sketching. I have tried sketching in like digitally, and I have tried drawing whole things digitally too. Like, I've done it before, the only thing about it, like for me, I find it a little more time consuming to try to do it that way. And maybe I don't know. It could be maybe it could be my tablet itself. Maybe because I'm just not used to actually working with a tablet. Because at least with my tablet, now I think it's a deal since I'm having to kind of look at the screen rather than looking down at what I'm doing, which is why you kind of have that weird kind of discourse going on. I thought I had a light blue gel pen I could use for the water. Well, I got a pencil here I can use. Okay, perfect. And so now one of the last things I am going to do, basically, kind of refine some of the line work for this. So let me get one of my thicker like little brush pens. I know I think I mentioned in the Discords, but pretty much the main program I use for my digital work is Krita, and so basically like once I've actually ooh, I caught myself for a moment. I almost smeared it again. And one of the things I normally do is I use Krita. Usually when I scan my drawings, I'll use Krita to kind of cover everything in. And I've candidly used other ones too, because I know I've used Affinity Photo when I had that for a brief while. And of course, I remember when I first tried out like Photoshop first time, I did try like Adobe Photoshop. I might have a little more inspiration mood board. Oh, nice. And what about to say? And I think when I first tried it, I think when I attended on my first computer drawing class in school years ago, we used Adobe Photoshop. That was probably the first and probably only time I used Adobe Photoshop. VeggieTales being another. That's weird. I haven't seen much on VeggieTales. Of course, I've seen it in passing, like over the years, especially growing up in a pre-Christian household too. I've seen it in passing, so I'm much aware of it. But the thing is, it's never, yeah, a lot of it's kind of really escaped my radar for most of it. It hasn't been until like much later years where I really started seeing more. I should check out more of it, but yeah, but I'm aware that show is pretty good. That's the weird thing with some shows. Like there's a lot of shows I've always known about, but I never get. It's very yeah. I've heard it's actually the writing show is very clever. That's the weird thing. There's always like different shows out there that there's shows that I've known about, but I never got around to checking out until much later. Like yeah, VeggieTales, that's one. I'm trying to think, what's another good one? I'm trying to think of another good show I think that I saw recently that I kind of missed out for years, but didn't get on to later. Cause yeah, Timon and Pumbaa. Timon and Pumbaa. I knew. Yeah, I think I remember catching it on TV when it was still on reruns. So there was that. And a lot of the a good chunk of those Disney afternoon shows, Cat Scratch. Well, Cat Scratch, I remember seeing that back when it was new. In fact, I remember when that show first came out. I remember really liking it because I remember it came. I think it came out the same time. I think Lilo and Stitch was. At least the TV series was out because I remember I recognized I think it was called who was the voice actor who did Pleatly? I forgot his name right now, but he did one of the cats on Waffles. And I think that was kind of a brief period where they were trying to have a lot of different stuff because that's the thing with different like actors and like different actors, especially voice actors, like they always have that one moment where they're really popular based on whether like program or movie they were in. Then there's just a lot of just different stuff. I watched all 20 episodes. Yeah, because it didn't last that long. But I was surprised because it had a pretty good cast. It was fun. It was fun. Yeah, I really remember liking the show. And then, of course, like went back to what we mentioned earlier, it ended up getting moved to Nicktoons Network. And the weird thing is, with Nicktoons Network, it seemed like even if a show didn't last that long and it had a couple of Waffles S. Yeah, that's right, Waffles. My mistake. And even though it had like 20, but it always seemed like they only aired like there was like only 5 episodes they would play over and over again, even though they had like a good maybe 20 to pick from. Because I remember the one they played the one where they had the root beer challenge. They had one that they had that race. I think they had another one. I think I can't remember. I I think it was like Blick became a hobo for a while. I think that's what it was. Because those three cats, it was Waffles, Blick, and Gordon. That was his name. And he had the butler named Hovis. For those of you who were actually watching me on, who were watching past week, I actually ended up drawing Hovis character, Hovis as a character, and I drew him. And also that was one of the few characters kind of like underrated roles from Alicia Marsh because he did him there because this one was more like low key roles. Yeah, but it was a pretty show. It was a shame, that it didn't last that long. When it got Johnson, yep, that was the one. That was another good one he used to always play. And the funny thing is, I didn't find until recently it was loosely based on a comic book series too. The only thing is about the comic series was often the comic series was actually it was a lot more violent, it was a lot more adult. But then when they kind of did the TV series, they kind of retooled it to where it was more like family friendly. Yeah, I've always liked little character. Oh yeah, yeah. Even Butler, even Hovis. Yeah, Marlisha Marsh. Yeah, he was great. It was really so great. You had a chance to meet him at Chicago Comic Con earlier this past month. But honestly, part of me kind of wishes, if I had did the Hovis one a little bit earlier, this one, I probably would have brought this drawing to have him autograph. Yeah, Mr. Blum. Yeah, Mr. Blum, since someone second falling at Waffle Comedy. Yeah, it was a great show. And trying to think what else was I what else getting mentioned? Trying to think what was a couple. Trying to look it up real quick. There was a couple of other like shows on there that were like short lived. Cause I remember like Nick's. Cause I know just in that era of Nicktoons network, especially around the like mid 2000s, like, there was like a lot of shows that just kind of came and went because not necessarily they were bad per se, but they just never weren't the big hits. Because at that time you had like, the really big hits like SpongeBob and Fairly Odd Parents, and then you had a lot of shows like that weren't bad. They still have a good yeah, Blick, that's the one. You are correct. Yeah, because I think I see a list right here. What was that? As Told by Ginger, Back at the Barnyard, Mighty Bee, Making Friends, Legend of Awesomeness. What was some other ones on here? Robot and Monster, Tough Puppy. I'm trying to see some more older ones though from like the two. A lot of these were a little bit later. I'm trying to see ones that were from like mid 2000s. Cause there was a bunch that kind of came and went. That just came and went from that period. Welcome to the Wayne. I don't think I've heard of that one. I remember that one now. There was that Nickelodeon. If it wasn't SpongeBob, your show goes flush. Oh yeah, because that's the thing, because like that was like their. It's funny because it's like like once SpongeBob took it, I don't think when SpongeBob came out, like I think most people knew when I think you knew when a show came out it was gonna do well. I don't think people knew it was gonna do that well. Because up until that point, I think before SpongeBob came out, Rugrats, yeah, that was kind of like their big cash cow show because it was a big hit. They had all that merchandise. They had a movie because like I remember seeing the movie in theaters too. They had a movie out here. They actually had three altogether. But then you had SpongeBob come along, and it pretty much blew it all the way out of the water to where Rugrats never really could catch up after as far as popularity goes. And it's funny now it's still going to this day. Of course, I'm part of the crowd that believes they should retire at a certain point. Because at this point, it's kind of going away as Simpsons, where it's never going to end. Let me have the glass of water here. Yeah, Nickelodeon speaks about Nick Jr., back the program. Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably showing my age here though, but I remember back when I used to watch Nick Jr. I think, of course, shows. I remember, of course, BlueSky, that was the one. Um, yeah, that's probably what will happen. if one of the main, if any of the main cast passes, probably yeah, yeah, and God forbid I speak into existence. Like it would probably happen if if it happens to like Tom Kenny or any of the main cast. If it happens, they probably wouldn't be able to go from there because some characters like you just can't really like you can have some good vacations, but it's like you can't really replace that spirit or that uniqueness they gave to them. Like with Simpsons, like say for example when knowing Frederick Dewey Canaver, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know, like they might end it in that aspect with her. She passes because I know that's what they did with when Phil Hartman. He voiced a lot of the recurring characters like Lionel Hutz, like Troy McClure. When he passed, they retired a lot of the characters he had voiced. So I'm pretty sure if either like Dewey Canaver or Dan Castanel or Harry Shearer, because Harry Shearer he's getting up there too. I feel if any of them went, they probably might end the show there, and then they just probably and then if they ever do like a recasting, they'll probably just do the smart thing, which they should have did earlier, is actually just end it, end the show, and then maybe years, like maybe reboot it, because at least once the show has been rebooted, like people, it's been rebooted, people won't have as much of a stigma around it. She sounds like nowadays. Yeah, and from my aware, like she does still enjoy voicing Marge, but I do agree, like that age is definitely taking a toll on voice, and that's the fortunate thing, when it comes to voice acting. Like at a certain point, no matter how much you like doing it, age is going to take a toll on your voice, and it's going to happen like sooner or later. Happen sooner or later, because it even happened to the legends. Like even happened from Mel Blanc, the original Looney Tunes guy. Because like if you listen to a lot of his recordings from when he did Looney Tunes in the later years, a lot of it always tend to sound pretty husky. And in some cases, you could definitely tell. Because I think the very last project I think he did, aside from Looney Tunes with Ray Roger, who was Mr. Spacely in the Jetsons movie, and you hear his voice, and you can definitely hear how the age was really kind of taking over like at that certain period of time. And that's the thing, like certain things like actually they then be inevitable after a certain period of time after a while. But yeah, but hopefully she will retire soon enough. But then anything it's kind of hard to tell because I know the late forgot her name right now. The lady who did Millhouse, I know she retired not too long. In fact, they actually went in and recasted her. He got card in 61, which hinders the points for a few years that records lines veterans. I remember that because I think he got in a car crash and Dawes Butler filled in for him. And what's interesting, part of the reason the Barney voice sounds the way now is partially a mix between him and Dawes Butler, because of course when Mel Blanc originally did Barney, he kind of more of like a higher pitched voice. But when Dawes Butler came in, he gave him a deeper voice. And then, of course, like, yeah, Pamela Hayden, that's the one. And, of course, once Mel Blanc came back, to kind of like, once he started returning to character, he kind of did a mixture of, the voice he was already doing for Barney and what Dawes Butler was doing. And, of course, that became a more deep voice Barney that we already know. And I'm trying to think who's voiced Barney now, because I know for a brief while, Kevin Michael Richardson, he did him for a while. I think he did him a few iterations, and I say like I know a lot of people don't really care for his interpretation. I actually kind of like his version because he does more of Barney as he sounded like in the very first season, where he had more of a higher pitched voice. In fact, let me look that up real quick. Let me see who does him now. Okay, so Mike Blanc. Okay, Matt Hill, Frank Welker. That makes sense. Yeah, he has done it a few times after that. Yeah, you can feel the Jane Eyre starting to take place in the short Shiska bugs. Give me just one moment. Hang on. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that's the one where Sammy Sam was a cook. Sammy was a cook, and Bugs Bunny just messing with him. Yeah, I do not. And I forgot, even the 60s, like that. Yeah, even the 60s of Looney Tunes, even before Mel Blanc got really old, like in like the 70s and 80s. Like even those ones in the 60s, even when the 60s, yeah, I'll admit they were starting to get pretty rough. Not just in the art stuff, but just in the time, but just in the comedy as well. But I think but at the same time, it's like that was a period where like the studio was kind of on its last leg as far as making animated films on a regular basis. And of course, a lot of the old heads, they either kind of retired or moved on to other things. I know by '60s at that point, like Chuck Jones, for example, he'd already moved on and started doing his own thing, make his own movies. No, but it's continued. Oh yeah, I heard they discontinued. That's a shame though, because they held on because they've been around for such a long time too. And speaking of that, I think probably one of my favorite properties by them, saw an unrated movie, Rock and Rule. And for those who know Rock and Rule, it was like it came out in the '80s, and basically what it was like kind of a set dystopian film where we have these anthropomorphic creatures and surround this band. And there was a and funny thing about it, like when the movie first came out, it wasn't really a flop. Oh, that's right. He was fired from kind of very kind of gay pure. Oh yeah, I did hear about that. I think he did. I think while he was, because he went up in his own movie, but he was still with WB. And I think he did that with another company at the time. That's right. He did get fired around that time. And then I think afterwards, like he joined another studio. I think where he did How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I think a little bit later on. Yeah, I think we're looking pretty good with this one. Oh, actually, let me do it. You know what I do? Let me kind of shade in the chair. Let me just give it just these gray chairs. But yeah, like that's kind of the thing. I think once a lot of the older crew members, when they'd already moved on to other stuff or they'd already passed on, it was like it was only gonna be a matter of time before the Looney Tunes stories that as people who had kind of come to know it was gonna actually come to an end. And okay, I believe we're just about done here. So let me add on today's date. So for day 18. Oh yeah, Grinch. Yeah, I think when it comes to Christmas specials, my favorites are Bob Clampett. Yeah, yeah. But first, get back to Grinch. Yeah, Grinch. I think when it comes to Chuck Jones stuff, I think most people when they think of Jones, they think of that short because it has a lot of like Dr. Seuss's like dude's art style. It has a lot of like Chuck Jones' style as well. About this Chuck Clampett. Yeah, I did love Bob Clampett stuff. I think probably like their wildest, dudes like, but their wildest stuff was done, with Bob Clampett was as director. A lot of their funniest stuff, was when funnier stuff was with Robert Kimson. Art Davis, a lot of his stuff has a great mixture too, where it can be very chaotic, and again funny. And it's funny how with each character, like they handle director handling is very different. Because, like, say for example, like for Bugs Bunny, where Chuck Jones, like he'll make Bugs more of like a sly wisecracker. He's more low key. Whereas like Robert Kimson, he'll probably be a little bit more aggressive. And then you got like Clampett's, maybe his name Mr. Jaw. I think I remember hearing about Mr. Jaw. What happened to that gel pen that I had a moment ago? Because now this thing's dried up a bit so I can actually finish up the marking here. Yeah, here we go. Made Mr. Jaw fighting a heart attack. Oh, yeah. That's right. It was one of the last projects he did before, it passed. And I remember, I think they did do a special. I forgot what the name of the show. I think it was Bugs Bunny Superstar, where they did get a lot of the old school like animators and directors that actually interview them to talk about their experience actually working on those shorts. So of course, I think they had Kimson. Kimson was on there. At least I think he was on there. They're not sure percent. Bob Blampett definitely, Tex Avery, a couple of other ones too. Let me just do a little touch up here. Oh, I forgot to color in his mouth this whole time. Oh yeah, that's right. I think apparently the issue. I think if I remember, I think the issue was he actually had gotten a clean bill of health. Yeah, he was having lunch and he just passed away right there. Yeah, it was pretty sad. Pretty sad though. Oh, the data pack too. Yeah, and I think a lot. I try to remember if there's any of these older guys who are still around. I want to say there's at least one of the original like Looney Tunes crew that are still around, but I'm probably sure not likely because there were some folks that were kind of hanging, at least just from that era of animation in general. There was a few folks that were hanging out for the longest time. Because I know Bill, because I think of can't think of any names right now. I'm just drawing all these. I'm drawing a whole bunch of blanks right now. But yet all of those guys, like they did so much their stuff. I think a lot of the projects they moved on to, because you had some folks where some of those animators where they went to work for Hanna-Barbera because that was like the big thing that was in once TV took over. You had some folks that didn't want to do limit. I think I think it was either Chuck Jones or Robert Kimson that called like limit animation called like illustrated radio. Like they really didn't jive with the whole limit animation that became popular at the time. So I think a lot of them, like some kind of went into teaching, some became like teachers, so they taught about animation. Others worked on more like low budget projects. I know some of them worked for Ralph Bashki for a while because I know a few of them like McKimson, like Manny Gold, who worked in these. They ended up working for Ralph Bashki for a while. Irvin Spence. Now he did more stuff with Tom and Jerry. He worked for him for a while too. Yeah, a lot of those guys kind of went to where they could do more like fun stuff that you couldn't really do on local TV at that time. And all right, I think we are just about done here. For done for today. So this is our podcast. So we got Groovy Games with Shaggy and Fry. With their guest Bonkers. And guys, I appreciate you guys actually dropping in for today's stream. I know it was a little more low key than usual. And it started out a little slower than I intended because I meant to do a little more, have the sketch a little bit more refined before I went ahead and actually started drawing, because I kind of wanted to have drawn enough so I could go straight into the pen and ink like right away. But I really appreciate you guys always kind of like dropping in. So I do plan to be back around the same time. Hopefully, because I believe I am off tomorrow. I think I'm off from work tomorrow. I might come and actually stream tomorrow at the same time as well. But I'll keep you guys posted if that's something I end up doing for tomorrow. Alright, but until then, guys, I hope you all have a really great day. Yeah, stay safe out there. Just have a great weekend. And as always, have a great week. Oh, let me bring it so you can see a little shoulder. There we go. Alright, have a great week.